nge-17 kaNovemba ngo-1985. Siyazibona ii-hip hop efestrini zihla zinyuka zamabhulu, asicingelanga uba kuzawudutyulwa.
No, Komani, it came to a standstill. We could feel and you could see into yokuba ngaba akumnandanga.
The impact of not buying in town, we may have underestimated it initially when we were planning the boycott. But when we observed later that it divided them too.
Yeah. On the 10th of August 1985, kwabakho a community meeting eyayibizwe kulaa cawe yasePosely, Old Apostle Church. Zavela ke ideas, what are the only solution here? Kukurhoxisa amandla ethu okuthenga.
Yeah, they came just to blast off, pick apart the whole meeting with an M4. Rat-a-tat on the mat is where the dead fall. Uvangestong aka, now it's game on. 14 people shot and they all gone. 22 were injured in the place of God. Yeah, rest in power to all y'all. You will never be forgotten. You live on.
Queenstown has 20,000 white inhabitants. Alongside is the township of Mlungisi, with more than 70,000 blacks. But now the white community is suddenly facing a threat to its very economic survival. A boycott of their shops and businesses, mounted by the blacks from the local township.
Ngo-1985, igqiza labamnyama kwindawo yakwaMlungisi eKomani lwathabatha iphulo lokukwaya ukuthenga kwiivenkile zabamhlophe phantsi koluhlu lwezigunyaziso zento ababeyibiza isonka nebhotolo. Abahlali babezibona ezo zinto zingundoqo ekuphileni kwabo kwanasekuphileni kwabantwana babo.
Township leaders have published their list of local demands. Toilets and water supply for every house. Reinstatement of families evicted for non-payment of rent. Upgrading of black schools and reforms in education. But they acknowledge that the struggle also goes deeper than that.
Igqiza labacinezeli bexesha localucalulo kwakunye negqiza labasemagunyeni bomgaqo-nkqubo lithetha ukuba abantu abamnyama ngokweendawo zabo zokuhlala babevinjwa iinkonzo ezingundoqo nezazixhamlwa ngabamhlophe kwiindawo abakuzo. Zonke ke ezo zinto zazidingeka ukuphucula ubomi ezilokishini kwaye zazingekho kungenjalo zinqongophele. Ezi meko bezingavimbi kuphela abantu abamnyama isidima sabo, koko beziphembelela umbhodamo, ihlabathi elaluqwalasela liwubiza njengolwaphulo-mthetho kubuntu.
Abamhlophe bebene-town councils. Thina ke ngokubamnyama sacreatelwa le nto kuthiwa zii-community councils. Qale apho i-problem. Within, kanzaba specific, within i-border region. I-border region ke uyabona mamos i-border region is more rural. Idorobhu ke ebezi stronger within i-border region. Ibikaradoko, iKomani. Now, into eyabalulekayo ukuthi ngoku let us form le nto kuthiwa zii-residence associations. But eKomani ke apho iqale khona ayiqalanga nge-residence association per se, because kwakho into critical apha eyasilidishila to i-consumer boycott, into ye-rent. Apho everybody noba unomzi noba unantoni kuthiwa uyarenta. Le nto ye-rent ke yasinyanzela phaya ku-84 uba sifumisha i-sort of a committee ekuthiwa i-residence representative committee. That was in 1984 eyayikhokelwa ngutata uNasutesha Sonto. Now apha ku-85 kwaqhabuka into entsha kwanyaze ba siphakame singabahlali into yezikolo into yezikolo ke iqale pha kuFebruary hwebe kubonakala ba ngenxa yokugcwala kokuhlala ekuhlaleni izikolo ngoku kwakhiwa nje izikolo zamazinki abantwana bafundiselwa ezigarage and lonto yalithi sikubeni ba ne-results ezi singabiyonto siphucukileyo inye ke isenior secondary lexesha inkwankca sithe phaya ngoMeyi sanentlanganiso nje singabahlali ke generally because I affect sport ke kulento esportini ke ngoku ngelo xesha ndingu-secretary ke wena sawe Queenstown European Golf Club esportini kwacaba ngokule ndawo sidlala kuyo iyasuswa siyakhutshwa pha kukho le community council in particular but apho ndifuza khona ndifuna xa ndizawuza apha kwinto ka-August 1985 ibe very clear into yoba besingalwi na-community council besisilwa nendlela ebekuhendlishwa ngayo issues and then nge-10th of August ku-1985 kwabakho a community meeting eyayibizile kulaa cawe yasePost, the Old Apostolic Church. There were two options ukuthi singene kwi-rent boycott okanye senza njani. Zavela ke ideas what are the only solution here kukurhoxisa amandla ethu okuthenga because asivoti ukuvota mos abantu abamhlophe ne ndithe kuni bekho i-town council abantu abamhlophe kukho i-colored management then apha elokishini kubekho into okuthiwa i-community council. The only way that singenza ngayo is to appeal to the voting community, that is abantu abamhlophe abantu abavotayo ngokuthini sirhoxisa amandla ethu okuthenga. Lo meeting nge-10th of August ka-1985 phaa ePostini. La meeting yeza nezindululo. Izindululo ke zaba zininzi kodwa saphuma izindululo ezisixhenxe. 1. Isindululo esithi aba bantu basiphetheyo mabangagqibi izinto kwi-office zabo ngaphandle ko-communicate nabantu ngolithi ke ngoku. That was our demand number 1. Demand number 1 was saying East Cape Administration Board must never take decisions without us. Ukhumbule ke East Cape Administration Board yayihendishwe by ayiphethwe by kwinto ezi-cordon of bills ne because into bebegqiba phaa yazize ukuthi sesigalelwa ngoku sixelelwa yi-community council bamakuthini. Fine. Ndifuna ibethele into uba yonke into ye-consumer boycott yayingekho against i-community councillors per se. It was the administration at all. Yonke intoto. Kwakhutshwa amaxheko, kwakhutshwa ixheko nexhekwazi phaa. Utata Madikane, umama Madikane wayehlala apha ngakwa-Ota. Utata uMafu bakhutshwa ezindlini bra balahlelwa ngaphandle kwezi community councillors. Utata uMafu wahlala for 18 months outside, you know. That was in 1984. No, utata uMafu wakhutshwa ngo-83. Umama Madikane wakhutshwa ngo-84. So abantu bahleli phandle imani. Now idemand number 2 was saying ke ngoku ulinka lento endithethe nabantu ukuthi makuphele eviction yabantu. Lento le-eviction ke ngoku izolinka nento ebaluleke kakhulu eyona ayi-critical. Kwakho lento kuthiwa i-lodgers permit. Nokuba as long as una 18 years akusoze ufumane indlu ngena-lodgers. Loo nto yenza ntoni? Yenza i-congestion ezindlini. Kungoko apha elokishini wasoloko ufumanisa uba kukho le nto kuthiwa kusesikwatini. Esikwatini ufumanisa uba kuhlala different families eziyi-10 within iya day one. I-source of conflict lelo nto because akho toilet woqala abantu bonke bahlala and uba ngaba una 18 years funeka ube ne-lodgers ngokuhlala kokwenu indlu ayikho.
Nanjengoko sesizichaphazele izigunyaziso ezimbalwa kwezo, bezikhona ezinye ezimbalwa abahlali bebezibona zifanele kuqukwa kuluhlu lokugqibela. Ezo ziquka ingcinezelo kwezezimali kwanendlela zolawulo eluntwini, irhafu efana nemvume yomngeneleli, nekuyindlela yokulawula abantu ezidolophini. Nanjengoko umongezi Sihlahla echaza, uthi yenye yendlela abantu abamhlophe babeyisebenzisa ukurhwaphiliza imali.
Because the apartheid government could not always fund black local authorities, they will expect you to have some income, you know. So you have taxes like lodger's permit. What does that mean? Immediately when you are 8 years in a household, you must pay permit for being 18 years. You pay every month a permit. For them, it's a way of generating money, but that's one of the demands, that it must be abolished, because we find out that you are paying for nothing. You are paying for staying with your parents in a cramped house. Yeah, you are paying for that. It was not okay. We could not accept it. That's why in those demands it isn't good. The better part of the township, people did not have toilets. They were using public toilets. It's quite an experience to use a public toilet.
See the public toilets, and that has to be used by so many houses. It's one of the big complaints that there are communal taps, and so many people have to use them, and so many don't have taps in their own homes.
You picture yourself, old men, young boys, queuing in a toilet like that. All of them at the same time, using one toilet. It was very bad. It was degrading for old people to live like that. There was no dignity for all for them. I'm saying the use of these toilets. That's why in those demands you will say that there's a demand for each household to have a toilet. One may think that is trivial. It was not. People were trying now during those demands to fight more for their dignity.
In those toilets, there was no sense of decency, particularly for young and old. People young would be sitting inside the toilet, and elderly people would also be forced to come and sit next to them, because you have no seated toilet facilities, but just open spaces with water running below the open spaces. You have to sit and you have to push each other for occupation of the space. Quite dehumanizing and very difficult conditions to operate on.
Then kwakho idemand ke ngoku yayitshisa kabuhlungu le stadium. Ibona ilocation nene sa stadium salapha. Mlungisi Stadium. Siphezu kwamangcwaba. Siphezu kwamangcwaba. Uyeka nje wena babaza ikhumsha abantu abathili bathi ayeka tepa. Amangcwaba amadala. Apha. Buya jonga phambi kwe stadium. Just apha ngakuzwelitsha. Ngamangcwaba amadala apha. So esi stadium sithi siphezu kwamangcwaba, fine. Masiyeke ke loba mhlawumbe izakuthetha ngento infrastructure or whatever. Sathi akho ndawo zokudlalela abantwana, makwandiswe ilento indawo zokudlalela. Those were the 7 demands esazipresented.
Kukuya kukhula ukujongana ngezikhondo zamehlo phakathi kwamaqela ezakhiwo zasekuhlaleni kwakunye nooceba abamnyama. Uninzi lwabahlali abasebatsha basezilokishini banyanzela abameli abamnyama kwibhunga ukuba barhoxe.
We wanted all the black councillors kwamasipala zibeke phantsi. Sabaxelela futhi okokuba siyayazi uba benifanele uba lixesha nifanele uba nizi-councillors ngexesha nikwii-homelands. Xesha le-homelands befika i-transition. Asilwi nani but we want them uba babeke phantsi. Barizayina ke abantu abanintsi ababe zii-councillors. Eziresistayo ke ii-councillors ke kwakubethwa ke izindlu ngamatye ke. Loo nto ke yasemzabalazweni. Qhaqho izindlu ngamatye kuthweni kujula ibhombu, kujula ipetrol bomb, nabanye abantu bade bayarisayina.
Umxolisi Oliphant waphawula kwakho izohlwayo zabo bahlali nababengathobeli imithetho yayimisiwe ngexesha lokungavumeleki kokuthenga nekwakuquka ukungathengi koomathengethengisi abamhlophe kwakunye nokuvalwa kokuthengisa ukutywala ngaphandle kokuba buthengelwa imicimbi yesintu.
Iqale kancinci ke lento yokuphula lento yokuphula umthetho because xa wophule umthetho uhamba uyosela because kwayeka uselwa. You see? Kwacaba abantu bayosela ezibeleni kwindawo outside Queenstown. And then apha eQueenstown nakuselwa. Ike wasuka ezibeleni uze ngapha. Khululiswa impahla ezizakho uzithwala enhloko uhamba uzenza itoyitoyi. That was an embarrassment. And the embarrassment ezama ukuthi ebantwini don't do this. Yeah.
Ze nibone uba nisele niyahamba niyabanjwa. Nihanjiswa ngaze okanazalwa.
My history, yeah. Vets riddled with amphetamines. PTSD is not a white, it's a war disease. Yeah. And it's plaguing all my people. A load of bullshit when they told us we were equal. They turn around and teach my people like they people. Mentally confused with the psychological warfare. Wrongfully accused. Made it to the news, but I never made it home to my family and my views. Yeah, but that's the price to pay when you're at war. And the crazy part that it all happened.
The message was that we don't buy from whites, we only buy from Indians or Chinese. So, Emakuleni, Kotai, yes, we were buying there. And if you want clothes, you don't go to Cuthbert's or Edworks. By then there was Edworks. I don't know what happened to it. Every citizen of Queenstown then was a police for that, led by the leadership of all forces, UDF and COSAS. What I mean by that was that if as a young man I see somebody that I know a teller somewhere else, I look shin, then we'll tell those guys, or I will lead the charge to say, hey, this guy utenge and I want saw. Then there were various punishments. There was Imvubu first. I think Imvubu was the first, whereby if you are caught, then backbet. It became an issue that was later extended to Uchwala. So meaning people should remain sober because we're more in a battle now. So if you are drunk, it was also a punishment. Imvubu, Intsipo, which is sunlight, or Isepil Plaza, and then we used to call it cheese.
We called a meeting with people who were selling liquor and said, look man, you must identify an outlet where you will buy your liquor. You know, they could not agree. And I understand why, because whenever you suggest a name, whether you say SATS or you say whatever, there are those who were already customers of that outlet. So they felt that the best way was not to sell the liquor at all.
Kwatsho ownership imama Bufalo. So sathi hambani ke masiyeni pha meeting. Lo meeting yayoxela loo nto babathi ke abantu botshwala mabuvalwe. Yayinge 15th le bagqiba kuyo. Then nge-16th meeting yayingomgqibelo. Yangena phaya ewisile. Ko announce uba bathi abantu botshwala makuyeke ukuselwa ngoba abavani.
Into ba what is the use sithenge izinto pha phinde zizokuxuthwela into zethu kuba utywala obuthi bona asibubi siyabuthenga sizobuthengisa apha elokishini and enye into babengayithandi amaxabiso ethu ayengaphantsi kwamaxabiso asedorophini nantso enye into yayibuhlungu and ngelaa xesha ke lixesha le-apartheid So yayingekho mnandi ke loo nto leyo. Lade lathi elinye ibhulu kum ndicinga fanuba ndingumlungu kuba ndinee-customers zabelungu. Ndathi yonke into exhomekeka kwindlela umntu omphatha ngayo. Andinakhomment eyenye endinayo engapha engaphandle wale nduxelele.
The first consumer boycott started in Queenstown, and it was quite very, very brutal and successful. Brutal in the sense that it was not a violent action that could have easily led to killing and mass arrest or whatever. It was just a simple movement that people in the community in Queenstown just said we are not going to buy from the white community. The white community is a community that lives side by side with us, that is enjoying the fruits of its apartheid structures, and we work with them, and yet they have better services, they have better roads, they have better houses, they have better conditions of living, including opportunities of work, including schooling, better schooling, and so on. So then they need to carry the burden as well. That is of the conditions that we're living in, that is of the education we subjected to, and the unavailabilities of employment opportunities, and on the list of demands that came. So the boycott started in Queenstown.
And UDF leading all this thing, it was more of a back burner of the ANC, if I can put it. But on our eyes, it was UDF. But you would hear from the struggle songs that we became aware of some of the leadership, like Bo Oliver Tambo, or Gavin Mbeki, you know, from the Toy Toy songs. Then you start asking, who's this guy, you know?
The January 8th statement. What the youth of our country is the shock absorber of our struggle. What you all use to the battlefield. Let us unite the people of South Africa and let us fight against apartheid. Hence, all over the country, you could see that South Africa was collapsing because at schools, that is why 1985 is 1 year that should be respected by all.
Apeni kamapolo kwenziwa i-raids, house to house raids, ukuzama ukuthi abantu babamba abantu section 79 and section 14 days in prison, detention without trial, or zonke zonto, trying to terrorize abantu.
Ndihambe nalamabhulu ndiyovalelwa ndibethwe nguMeyberg leli bhulu ngamaXhosa ababini. Ndiwalibele nje ifani zawo, but bani nababona ebusweni ndiyabolathanda ndithi hayi ngulo nalo nalo. Mandivume ndibethwa kabuhlungu, ndibethwe into engayaziyo, andipolitiki.
Woke us up early in the morning. They asked me to touch my ear, and the young one probably trying to see if I'm old enough for them to take me away. And at the time I couldn't. And then they took her. And I know my friends of mine and their elder brothers just behind my house. They were taken on that day because of that raid. And this raid would happen every time when there's new information on the hands of the apartheid police.
Bantu babanjwe, omama abadala, like umama uNoluzi lobentana ngayombasana, nomama uMabhayi Sidandala, bangamaxhobo obanjwa bengabantu abadala, nosisi mama kwaNcethezo, usisi Tipoti, babanjwa bayovalelwa koMatildini.
Umthetho Koli wabanjwa ngongena lusini ngelo thuba lisebe lezokhuseleko.
Ndazovalelwe eTildini. Ndandisityiswa ipapa yomilimili kathathu ngemini for 6 months. Ndithi ndilinde into ukha athi awusiboni nasi ayisitya. Xa ndisijonga esi sitya esi, dem sisitya senja ezi, sikhothwa yinja sineentsela phaa phakathi zenja. Ndithi ndikhe ngalo nto, athi yikha ngale nto because wena nale nja niyafana.
Ndandingekayi nasexesheni busingelaa xesha, ndaqala ngalaa mini ke ngoku bagqiba undibetha.
They call themselves the Comrades or Young Lions, and at various times they have turned their black townships into virtual war zones, controllable only by an occupying force.
I think what Radio Freedom is trying to say, that for a long time, the war has been confined to the black areas. This war now must be taken to the white areas.
It's having a very bad effect financially. To give you an instance, in one particular day, our entire takings wouldn't have paid the postage on a letter to England.
Naxa beyazi uba kuzawubakho i-rate bebebaleka benomzwandile njokweni owaye watshiswa kumzwandile.
Nanjengoko umzabalazo wabasemagunyeni ekuhlaleni kwakunye noosomashishini abamhlophe waqhubeka, iintanda zaqala ukubonakala kanye kwiintsika zasezilokishini. Iyantlukwano kwizimvo phakathi kwabo beqela le-UDF kwakunye neqela le-Azapo maxawambi zazineziphumo ezibi nezazivela kwimo yengcinezelo yabangcatshi bezokhuseleko.
Mzwandile lowo wayesithi xa kusenzeka into ezimithingini, kanti umzwandile ufakilwe ke loo nto yakhe kwakuthiwa yinto yayitape whatever, but watshiswa kumzwandile ke ngokwanonesistobe babini nonkosi yabo. Unkosi yabo ndilibele ifani yakhe, but wabeke umzwandile ke uyabhubha ke. Ngale mini umzwandile abhubha ngayo kuba nje uxolile ekuseni ona Sunday. Umzwandile asimbona ngathini uba kanti usevenini.
Sizimpimpi kuba siye Azapo, sinemipu esinayo ephaa kwaVenford. Ubi nje imeko yethu iyakutyhuzwa ngezinto nje ezingekhoyo nobumpimpi yonke loo nto leyo.
Apho ngoku into ebisengamandla more than by i-revolution, ibi-competition.
Enzelisekile phaa kuthiwa makuze itayari le nokutsho itayari le-tractor.
So iAzapo was opposed to the consumer boycott. Now le nto ke i-problem ekhona we-centralize phaa eNewbright. Yabona iNewbright? iAzapo ke I can say we-based phaya.
Then ke ngoku sibasabanjalo ke uzalwa kokaMncedisi uzalwe ke ekhayeni le-ANC, but umntu once reach a certain age une-choice yobomi bakhe because he can take a decision ngobomi bakhe. So that's how it began to into bangaba kube khona ilantuka iAzapo. But even then, you know, most at times you find that as understanding or asicingi ngokufanayo, you take umuntu ongekho political organization yakho or movement yakho umthathe as enemies, because I still remember one time ubhuti Mncedisi Mosiyana xa ethetha uyathetha, he was so vocal, you understand. Ufumanise naxa ethetha athethe amaqabane like amaqabane lena eAzapo ayisonto bangabantu ebengavana nabo, but besingabonani ngasonye ke nge-ideology lena, uyabo.
Into ye-consumer boycott it's assistile to an extent, but it's a sheerness gas.
Kwakunzima lo mini kwakumelwa uandile lo mini nosikhoba abasekho.
Yes, yeah. Yes, at a political level there was that. You know, when people are in the majority or enjoy hegemony, they like to impose their ideology on other people, right? That's always the case. And then in this situation, you know, there was Azapo. There were Pambili Tlokos and all this, yes, these guys. And Andile Code, you know. Yeah, they were harassed, you know. But truly speaking, you would expect in a mass type of struggle to have some elements. You know, let me start by saying, even the enemy was aware of these tensions, right? Now they will use our own UTF people or ANC people, you know, as to start something, you know, not being led politically by any structure, but they will do something. For example, I remember I was discussing this with Andy Lekoti about 2 weeks ago when I went out of hiding to rescue his brother, you know, next to this police station here when he was being attacked. And also when Skova was being attacked, we were in a mass meeting. We have to break from that meeting to go and help him there, you know. Yes, there were those tensions. And I think they were more exacerbated by the Port Elizabeth problem. There was too much problem in Port Elizabeth around UTF and ANC. It was not too much here, but because of what was happening in Port Elizabeth, then yes, the thing of impacting on what was happening here. We didn't have bad relations. Those who are still friends even today, we didn't have bad relations, even politically, you know, because for me, I've never been oppressed by PAC in all my life. I've never been oppressed by a support black consciousness in all my life. I know who the oppressors are, you know. I've never been oppressed by them. So there is no way in which I can see them as my enemy, you know. To me, it was a difference of tactics.
Late, umfana wakwamajikela ndalekwa nam ndathi xa ndibamba igate kwabe kujinga nebhayinethi lena phezu kwephila le sendisitsho ke obu bomi obu uncedisa i-environment ebekuyo.
Ukubanjwa inkokheli kwabanjwa abantu abathile.
Kaloku ukubanjwa kwabantu nokutshiswa kwaba bantu kukufumaniseka apha kuthi ekuhlaleni ukuba kukho iimpimpi abathengisa ngabanye abantu kula mabhulu abafika bathethe izinto ezenziwayo kuloo ndawo njengoko injalo, so that umlungu lo azazi into yoba xa efika endaweni ethile uzawungena phi athini phi, kuba kaloku yonke information uyifumene ne, so uyayazi uba uzawufika enze ntoni na ke ngoku phaa endlini. Saqonda uba ngoku xana benje saqala kulapho ke ngokwaqala utshiswa kwakhona abantu. Zii-information abazinikayo ngabantu abamnyama emabhulweni. Watshiswa ke ngoku umntu. Yabo? Watshiswa ke ngoku umntu. Wathiwa inye into ayifunayo ifuneka atshiswe. Kulapho ndayibona ubuchopho bomntu bu xa busitsha yadubula intloko itsha qwa. Phuma umsobho lowo onyukayo.
So there were court martials. Now their objective was to protect the interest of the society at large and to enforce laws that would not have ordinarily be enforced by the South African police, like you cannot go buy and buy in town. It's a consumer boycott. You understand? You cannot do this and that. They were doing that, but in that structure too, were infiltrated. You understand what I'm saying? Were infiltrated. There were people used to do wrong things.
Emva kwa yonke ke loo nto zaqhubekeka zona ii-meetings sinegotiate.
Only a mile or two away, Adrian Lutz of the Afrikaans Chamber of Commerce is also planning drastic action. After an initial period of worry and desire for compromise, white opinion is hardening. Many businessmen are now calling for tough action to end the boycott, and Adrian Lutz has decided to take it. Quite simply, he and other employers will soon start laying off their African workforce.
Consumer boycotts just became the common weapon across, particularly in the Eastern Cape province. You had a consumer boycott in Port Elizabeth then. You had consumer boycott in Queenstown, consumer boycott in East London, and consumer boycott in Queenstown. The significance of the consumer boycott in Queenstown is that it was the longest consumer boycott. It was the most effective one after the Craddock one.
It solidified racism, because now racists had to come together, and say, look, we have a serious threat here and we are being divided, and what is it that we do?
If, and I put it very open and bluntly, if by the end of this month, which gives us maybe 14 days, they do not stop, I will call on the members of the organization to retaliate.
Collapse khona a meeting, collapse on the 14th of November 1985. The 14th of November, yabona ngoku usiya towards December, abantu sekhona nopenika ngokuba kusonto Christmas.
In fact, the town hall has been the scene of negotiations between white businessmen and black boycotters. But according to the whites, the talks have got nowhere.
Well, we have tried right from the start in negotiating firstly with a group who termed themselves the Boycott Committee. We didn't make very much progress. They subsequently formed themselves into a group called the Residents Committee. We tried to meet with them on several occasions, but not to any avail. And then the group which are now in power are the Residents Ad Hoc Committee. And again, it is very difficult to establish contact. We have tried through private bodies, commerce and industry, to see if we can't get some communication going with them.
Ngenxa yobude ke ngoku be-boycott, because i-boycott it really yathatha ixesha elide kakhulu. Amabhulu amanesibiza ke ngoku kwi-talks. We had to sit down namapolisa, we had to sit down no-magistrate, we had to sit down ne-council, we had to sit down ne-businessmen. Businessmen putting pressure emabhulwini ukuthi, hey, makumithwe demands so that kuzoliftwa le consumer boycott.
Even in town centre stores like Woolworths, the boycott is biting. A sprinkling of white customers hardly keeps shops like this one ticking over.
Now, collapse was a negotiations on the 14th. Meeting at 9. At 9. Go on the scene. At 9. Well, 5 askafile esgqibeni because abantu negotiated nabo negotiated in good faith.
In a quiet spot, we met some black community leaders. One of them had taken part in the negotiations.
When we attended that meeting, I, for myself, I was hopeful that they'll understand the message and do what we were asking them to do. And what I thought I saw, me, not anybody, about myself, I thought that since they are the people who are giving the law and who are giving the orders, they thought that we are just going to accept those orders they were giving us and think that we will just accept them as they come from them.
But you're saying that the mood in the township is not like that anymore. People are not prepared to take orders.
No promises. They don't want promises. They would want actions.
Okay. The first victim of the Queenstown massacre was 65 years old then, Utatulizo Ngana, who in that meeting, Wawanyatele Konsina Mapulu, when he referred to the apartheid system, he referred as an evil system. All of them reacted.
uJohn Johnson asithreatenishe kula meeting. It was about 5 o'clock. Ekonke meeting qala ngo9. Akutyiwa wangatyiwa kweze meeting wangikhona into kusela amanzi. Lento ikhoyo ngoku. Athi stop this boycott at exactly 12 midnight. Not 5 to. It will be too early. Not 5 past. It will be too late. And it intimo umuntu olethi delegation. Ulethi delegation and he done bad. I was assigned to lead the delegation as a chairperson then. Well, the response was to say, kaloku kozimabhokula wethu sineparlament yethu anti nani neparlament yethu ethi iparlament iphaa election siyonika ingxelo. It was not a mistake to say siyonika ingxelo ngecawe kaloku kwangavela ukubiza imeeting njanganjani anti sixoxa ngolwesini abantu bafumana ngecawe emva kwemini sathi ke ngecawe siyonika ingxelo ke then ke sive ukuthi abantu bathini but ukustop boycott is not our mandate.
Kwathi ke ngokusisemithingini ewisile siyazibona ihipop efestreni zihlaza inyuka zamabhulu
ngothethathethwano phakathi kwabameli kumacala omabini nolwalungabhekeli ndawo. Urhulumente omhlophe waziqhobosha iinzame zokungavunyelwa kwabathengi ngokuthumela amajoni axhobileyo. Ngehipo kwakunye nombaxa yabo bachitha intlanganiso yayibanjwe ekuhlaleni. Ibanjwele kwicawa yayikwilokishi yakwaMlungisi bezimisele ekupheliseni nangayiphi indlela ukwalelwa kwabathengi.
The declaration meeting opened, then I handed over uLinda Shroba ne abathi take through i-report asikafiki kwi-assessment. Then elalizi between uJohn Johnson lexesha lafika. It was about 3:45. Uyabona iMorifa, uyabona iBaptist. Yabona iWisle engabikho nkulu ngexesha. Lavele ilizwe sithi chitha lo meeting.
Amapolisa athi asinika i5 minutes sidisperse ewisile. Ku5 minutes ngayingu 1 2 3 4 5 ngohlobo ndibala ngayo yakhala imbumbulu.
So suddenly there was pandemonium because there was tear gas being shot inside. So the youth was running through the windows. Old people were ducking underneath the chairs. But there were some people running out. What I noticed, because I was standing right here, I noticed an old man, Lizo Ngana, being dragged inside, bleeding. And then he fell just where we were standing convening the meeting. It's right in front of the pulpit.
Sisothuke leyo into ayingena amabhulu ecaweni. Kofuna ke ngube ngulo ke kuzawunyathela emntwini. Nami ndifuna usinda wonke umuntu ufuna usinda. Sabe siyaphuma ke ngolo sayasinda ngolo hlobo.
I was worried about this man. When these Caspers from this side shifted over to the side of Moravian Church, I ran quickly to the second house there to utilize the telephone. So I phoned Dr. Vahet. And then he said I must take the old man down to him, or because I wanted him to come to the township because I could see that a lot of people are being shot.
Abantu abaninzi ke abaditshulwa ngalamini people azange bafele phaya kwanonzwakazi badutshulwe yabona apha in Top Street.
By the time I came back, I found the old man dead.
Ngena ngaphakathi ezinto ezi we had to basiyofumana amanzi ngaphandle uzama usave abantu uyafika empompeni kugcwele inyosi and akho chance yokoyika inyosi usindisa ubomi bomuntu uyovula amanzi. There was a pandemonium, you know.
Outside the hall, police were driving through the township streets, wildly shooting. People were frantically scattering across the dusty old township, trying to escape the bullets of the sharpshooters.
Akhawuleza sachwechwa sazama uchwechwa sabashenxisela ecawe sabahoqela ecaleni sazama ukhupha imbumbulu ezo. Yesabona ba sizawuphela apha iyatsho imbumbulu ngaphandle sabashiya apha. Sathi ke kodwa akufunekanga sigodukile sonke singakhange sibone ba bonke ababalela ukuthula bagodusiwe baye komakwabo kuba into ezasuka yenzeke sasuka siphume sonke sishiye izidumbu ngokwecaweni singaphinde sinikwe ngoku inkonzo for i-meeting.
Ngomso ndaya emoshwari. Xa ndifika emoshwari, imoshwari yayimbi kakhulu kangangokuba ngeli xesha basihlalisile sizokufanisa phambi komnyango lo wemoshwari kwakugeleza igazi laliphuma ngomnyango lihambe lo ngena edrainini. Bavula ngexesha babevula ngalo sangena ngaphakathi babeleliswe omnye ngaphezu komnye kangoba imoshwari le isikhenkcizi babesicimile ngolunya yayinuka imoshwari le igazi lilihlaza.
Do you see the body of your son?
Ndimbonile pha umzimba wakhe phakathi kwabanye. Ndibonile ndamfumanisa uba udutyulwe entloko.
Yabona ndiqala ngeke yaqala into ngecawe. I-ceasefire zange ibizwe ngomntu yayenziwa ngabefundisa becawe because bayonegotiate bona behamba nomfundisi Michael Hall.
Giving up of old positions, particularly by the whites, and to allow the young black people to express themselves and let that anger out. And we've got to hear some very unpleasant things.
Ilokishi man kwasekusenzeka la ngoku baninzi ke abantu ingxeleka.
Inhlekele yehla kanye ngelo thuba urhulumente wabamhlophe kwakunye namapolisa akhe axhobileyo athi abulala abantu abali-11 kwaye ashiya abaninzi bengxelekile ngokwasemzimbeni nasengqondweni.
And we had to see ukuthi kuzawuqhubeka ntoni, bazawungcwatywa njani abantu, kuzawuthwani. Then we received a call from Lusaka that we must come to Mlungisi Township here at the Kosato House, Bramfontein.
Comrade Oliphant arrived in Johannesburg just a day after the shootings in Queenstown. He was heartbroken. You could see that he emerged from different and difficult conditions, and we had to sit him down because he was emotional, he was shocked, he was angry, but at the same time he had a mandate to execute, that is of ensuring that the tasks that he was given are fully undertaken. Firstly, there was a need to prepare for the mass funeral. Secondly, there was a need to get leadership, that is UDF national leadership, to respond to the situation. And thirdly, were the logistics of the funeral. So we had to act fast because at the same time we had other urgent matters that we had to respond to, including quite incidentally at that time, another massacre had taken place almost at the same time in Alexandra. So there were quite a number of activities in Johannesburg at that time in response to that. Firstly, we went back to Kosato House and where Comrade Oliphant gave his account. Incidentally, at that time, there was an international press conference, which in fact spoke to all the massacres minus the Queenstown one. And then through discussion with the leadership, then we agreed that Queenstown should in fact also form part of the international press conference. And the Comrade Oliphant then was put on the spotlight. I had to persuade him that, look, comrades, there's no other one who can tell the story of what happened in Queenstown. So you must sit there on that table with those leaders, and you can see that most of the people who are sitting there are just like you. They've ran away from the thick of things, and they are now sitting there giving an account of what has happened in their areas. And Comrade Oliphant didn't disappoint. He sat as part of the panel on the conference, gave account, which shocked everybody, of what really happened, how the meetings initially to deal with issues that led to the consumer boycott collapsed. And later on, when they went to give a report back to the community, while starting to address, police came fired through the window, killing the leader of the civic organization, Comrade Mutatu. And the pandemonium broke out, and subsequently, almost 14 people were killed. And by the time he, in fact, arrived in Johannesburg, he could not even give the fullest account of the total number, because he had from time to time to link up with comrades in Queenstown to get at the exact numbers. So in a way, the situation became a much more burning one out of the accounts that were given. Then we agreed that we should, in fact, immediately move and set up processes that are both in terms of logistics to ensure that we prepare for the funeral.
But there was that sense of loss, man, when you get inside, let alone the masses running around, fighting with the police. But when you meet with elderly people, you can see that sense of loss.
This thing, Komani massacre, it is not just an incident. It is part of the National Democratic Revolution. We were trying to seize the political power. The first stage, because the National Democratic Revolution is a two-stage theory. The first stage being the seizure of the political power, and then later the seizure of the economic power.
Yes, I can say this struggle for ours, because it goes hand in hand with the national struggle for liberation of the black person, in the sense that what is happening here is because we're struggling for one municipal vote, one municipality, which goes hand in hand with the one vote, one man, one vote nationally.
Ibininji man into yango-85. Baninji abantu ababhubhayo ngo-85. Baninji abantu abonzakala ngo-1985.
Bathi bakudibana abahlali bakwilokishi yakwaMlungisi ukuzilela abo bathe basweleka. Wonke umuntu wayengabikwa hlaba wazimasa into enokuchazwa njengexesha lomqondiso kwimbali yaseKomani, into babeyibiza umngcwabo wenyikitya yokufa kuKomani.
Ndathi khona istadium emngcwabeni sasinxibe isiketi ezimnyama neesheti zekaki neebheret ezimnyama.
Ulusizi unjalo, ugcwele unjalo, kukho ii-marshals, ndingatsho, because most of the time sesigcwele istadium, sicula amaqabane, iibhokisi ziphekelwe phambili. No, iKomani, it came to a standstill. You could feel and you could see into yokuba ngaba akumnandanga. I don't think umuntu engayanga kulaa mngcwabo ngumuntu ophe wayephathwa ngamadolo, umuntu ogulayo okanye umuntu utheni. Every person, every child was, every people, I meant to say, babekhona emngcwabeni, and kwakunxitywe ikaki. Kwakunxitywe ikwaki, uthwele ibherethi, kukho ilanto kuphethwe ke nee-flags ke zombutho.
Many of us carried brutal scars on our bodies of torture, of inhuman conditions that were subjected to, both in detention and outside detention, that we can relate to. There are men and women, unsung heroes in that community, who were subjected to the most brutal forms of torture during the time we were in detention. Some of them are not known because their names have never been called. But when the story in its true senses is taken forward, we can in fact relate to those names. We can in fact raise their names. That's where my heart bleeds, because when you talk about people who have made selfless sacrifices, many of them, their names remain unmentioned in all these experiences. And it's not just men, but it's also women as well. Some of them left their homes and disappeared in the life of Johannesburg, not because of their choices, but because at the time conditions didn't allow them to go back home. Equally, there are those who in fact endured, who stayed and carried the mantle up until we saw the light of freedom. And We owe it to them and many others that could not be with us, who are lying in exile, in graves. We also need to pay tribute to them.
Rest in power to all y'all. You will never be forgotten. You live on. Yeah. History made them Mlungisi. What a tragedy that it came down to this. In reality, it was all legal hits. Due to policy, that was all legalist. In 85, deep in apartheid,
Amaqabane ezintlu zonke angungelana emanyene ngengoma ekwanxebe nemibala yezopolitiko yemibutho yawo.
Yasenza sarongo mentally. Kuba ke azange siye-experience laa nto ngaphambili. I-West ke eyezidumbu. Ewe isidumbu ke mna ndisiqhelile uba sisibona every now and then ezibhedleleni. Kodwa ke i-West leya usibone sisenzeka apha phambi kwakho.
After ke i-boycott nyhani ke kwabuyo kahlalo the committee eseyikhona abe ayazama ukukhulula. Ndikhumbula ngasaqala mos kwabakho TLC. Yeah, I think i-TLC. Ngoba kaloku kwakhona bafuna kubangena amaqabane ngoku e-counselling bazokwazi ke ngoku uba ngaba bakwazi ngoku uthatha imicimbi baxoxe laa nto ke i-counselling. Kuza ngoko kumane kuphucuka ke kancane kancane noko sade sanazo nezitrato kombiwa sabanetha sabanee-toilets eziyadini sabanobane into besikade singenayo kuba yona nto sasifuna ubomi obungcono buphucukileyo. That is the basic things we didn't have.
Izindlu ezintsha zakhiwa ukukhawulelana nokukhula kwabantu ezilokishini. Izitalato zalungiswa. Umzi ngamnye wanegumbi lawo langasese kwanempompo yamanzi kwanonikezelo lombane. Izinto zabonakala ziba ngcono kubahlali basezilokishini. Iphulo lokunqanda ukungathengwa laba nempumelelo kumadini onke enziwayo. Kodwa umbuzo omileyo ngokuba le mpumelelo iza kuhamba ndimani. Inyaniso ngeyokuba babesaphila kuMzantsi Afrika okwingcinezelo. Nto leyo yayithetha ukuba kwakukude bhagubha ukuba umzabalazo uphele.
Achievement number 1. Uphuma ngothi etrongweni siphume izindlu zikhona. Sakhiwe. That's why namhlanje uva kuthiwa kukho uzakhele kukho into okuthiwa ngomaxaki. Zonke izinto zakhiwa after consumer. Number 1 ikhaya elihle. Yabona phaya yayithafa namna sayithafa namathole la. Sasine golf course pha. Ikhaya elitsha nozakhele nomaxaki. Yabona phaya amaxaki unumber 12 we-golf course unqula kulaa ndawo kanye. So i-achievement number 1 kukuthi akukho ndlu apha elokishini ingena-toilet ingena-tap. Ngasiyeka ke into uba abantu bemane bezokugozola bezidiliza kodwa akho yard apha elokishini ingena-tap ingena-toilet.
Phambi kuba sikhululeke sizezo zinto zi-athe ebuchotsheni. Yabona nangoku singathi sibuyela kwaFaro. Yabona ngoku ingathi siphinda sibuyela kwaFaro.
It says the people shall govern. All national groups shall have equal rights. The land shall be shared amongst those who work it. All shall be equal before the law. All shall enjoy equal human rights. There shall be work and security. The doors of learning and culture shall be opened. There shall be houses, security and comfort. There shall be peace and friendship. And you know, when I'm reading this clauses of Freedom Charter, it reminds me something clear, you know, that Eskanlen Street, before Freedom Charter was adopted, yayihlelelwe phayana Eskanlen Street. So like as I say, Komani history ngokwayo.
Other than the defiance campaign in Nelson Mandela, Port Elizabeth, and East London, the other center of activity of the defiance campaign was in Queenstown. The church, that is the Church of Israel, not Mali at all, the Church of Israel, is the site where, in fact, the defiance campaign would, in fact, start from.
Is there a level of dignity of black people and Africans in particular? The answer is yes, to a certain extent. Yeah, are we then happy or feeling fulfilled about what was achieved? The answer is no. There are too many challenges. For example, we still have housing problems here. You know, in our own government. Ne? We still have this challenge of housing. We still don't have township economy, a vibrant township economy. We don't have.
Like as I said earlier on, that the way we hoped izokwenza kanjani, sasicanga into yoba ngaba namhlanje wonke umntana seKomani akho mntana uzaba kwi-backyard. Izindlu akabikho zindlu, even today asinazo izindlu. Even I'm talking to myself, I'm fortunate that ndihlala ekhaya and I'm the only child, so I didn't have a house. I don't have a house of my own. Ndihlala ekhaya.
I-revolution iyaqhubeka, the struggle still continues because we still have to fight. Asikayeki. Kuthiwa kuTambo wayethe kubhetere ngosingekakhululeki ubunzima kunobunzima isabufumana xa sikhululekileyo. Bobo bunzima ke obo.
Kwilokishi yakwaMlungisi esele ikhululekile, izinto zibonakala zingcono ngokuba ngcono kunangexesha lengcinezelo. Noxa kunjalo oko akwanelanga konke kwaye imingeni isathe gqolo nanamhla oku. Nangona abahlali abaninzi benamagumbi angasese, umbane kwakunye neempompo, izindlu kwakunye neendawo zokudlala, ziseyenye yeengxaki ezikhoyo. Abantu abakwazi kufikelela kwizindlu ezizezabo, uninzi luhlala kwiindawo zengqesho njengabanxusi. Iindawo zokuhlala azinakekelwa ngendlela eyiyo. Kwanezorhwebo kuluntu luyaqhwalela. Kucaca mhlophe ngokwekati emhlophe ehlungwini ukuba ukutsala nzima kwanomzabalazo usaqhubeka.
Tears turn to ashes, tear gas rains on the masses. They told me they would blast us, but we stay strong, no molasses. Tinas kabalapa, fuck your passes, can't afford to be passive. Yeah, we fought back, we had spotlight the matches. Trailblazing in the streets with petrol bombs, not a candle. They were armed to the teeth on hippos, causing damage. I don't know what to think, a kid, but now a parent. Yeah, it was apparent that they didn't care about us. It was apparent. They didn't care about us. No baumling ganjan, ungaifumana le shot, lip back shot. Buying your back, my nigga, you been shot. Little time to react, the dogs, they gon' bark. Best believe they will bite. They were taught to delight in the flesh of black plight. Yeah, it's not right. Yeah. I'm as old as our democracy. Yeah, but I still witness the atrocity. Yeah. Where were you when they were dropping freeze? Where were you when they refused to even buy in town some cheese? You could never lie to me, yeah, cause I know my history, yeah. vest riddled with amphetamines. PTSD is not a white, it's a war disease.